Thank you.
People of Nottingham and way beyond coming together there to have a minute's silence out of respect and honour for the people that were tragically killed, Grace O'Malley Kumar, Barnaby Webber and Ian Kurtz. Thoughts with all of their families. For now, let's bring ourselves up to speed though with the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Michelle, thank you. Well, as you've just been hearing, the city of Nottingham has fallen silent in memory of the 3 victims of Tuesday's brutal knife attacks. If you're watching on television, you would have seen live pictures where hundreds of people gathered in the Old Market Square in the centre of Nottingham, outside Nottingham Council House, to pay their respects to the 3 that were killed. 19-year-old students Grace O'Malley Kumar and Barnaby Webber from Nottingham University, and 65-year-old local school caretaker Ian Coates, all killed on Tuesday in a knife attack. Well, the brutal murders have brought the city together and police are working to find out a motive. Detectives have been given a further 36 hours to question the prime suspect, who, it's been confirmed today, was a former student of the university. Well, in other news today, Boris Johnson has rejected the findings of the inquiry looking into Partygate, which has reported that Mr Johnson deliberately misled Parliament. The report says the former Prime Minister was guilty of serious contempt and was complicit in a campaign attempting to abuse and intimidate the committee itself. Mr Johnson has described the findings as a deranged conclusion and accused the inquiry itself of hypocrisy. The former Prime Minister would have faced a recommended suspension of 90 days had he not quit as an MP. Now MPs will debate the report into his conduct on Monday. Meanwhile, the Deputy Labour leader, Angela Rayner, says he should never have been Prime Minister.
Well, I think the Privileges Committee is pretty damning. You know, it's serious. Boris Johnson is not only a lawbreaker but a liar. He's not fit for public office and he's disgraced himself and continues to act like a, pound-shot Trump in the way in which he tries to discredit anybody who criticises his actions when actually a decent public servant would have done the honourable thing, would have had a little bit of humility and would have apologised to the British public for what they put them through.
Angela Rayner speaking earlier on today. Well, here's how voters have been reacting to the report.
He did an excellent job in a difficult situation, so I don't see how they can down him now for what he made a mistake. So did hundreds of others. They don't get followed up.
He's the kind of guy that if you were having a party, you'd want him to come. He's a nice, fun guy, but as leader of the country, no.
Under the circumstances, yes, things, could have been different, but still nobody else could have done it. He got the job done.
Well, it's been confirmed today that by-elections in Uxbridge and South Ruislip and Selby and Ainsty for Boris Johnson and Nigel Adams, respectively, will be held on July the 20th. All 3 Britons who died after a dive boat caught fire off Egypt have been named. Stephen Hill and Paul Darling were taking part in a scuba diving lesson when the vessel burst into flames on Sunday. It was announced yesterday that 58-year-old Christina Quinn, who is a chief executive of a hospice in Plymouth, was also killed in the fire. The mother of a 9-year-old boy who was repeatedly beaten has been jailed for 27 years. Alfie Steele had 50 injuries on his body and was found dead in his home in Worcestershire. Carla Scott, his mum, was sentenced for child cruelty and manslaughter, while her partner, Dirk Howell, has been jailed for life with a minimum term to serve of 32 years. And a double child killer has been granted parole and will be released from prison subject to conditions. Colin Pitchfork was jailed for life in 1998 for murdering 2 teenagers. He strangled 15-year-olds Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire in the 80s. The Ministry of Justice plans to ask the Parole Board to reconsider its decision. And tributes have been pouring in today for double Oscar-winning actress and former Labour MP Glenda Jackson, who's died today at the age of 87. She died peacefully at her home in London this morning with her family by her side. She gave up a successful career in acting to join the House of Commons as an MP. She served for 23 years. The former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair has described Miss Jackson as a truly formidable woman who will be much missed. Glenda Jackson, who died today. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, yes, I am Michelle Dewberry, right through with you till 7 o'clock tonight. It's all going on tonight, ladies and gents, because, of course, the bombshell report is out, the one that we've been waiting about 14 months for. Of course, it found Boris Johnson guilty as charged. Was anyone really expecting anything else? He is having none of it, of course. He reckons it's a protracted political assassination. He says it's tripe and deranged. Who's right, him or them? And Wes Streeting, he says that the rich should be more patriotic and pay more tax. Excuse me? Since when has your measure of how patriotic you are got to do with how much tax you pay? That is absolute nonsense, if you ask me. Am I missing something or what? And I'll tell you something that made me happy today. An energy company finally has been fined for providing absolutely dire customer service. I love it. I want to see more businesses fined. I'm sick and tired now of this new norm where we sit there half an hour on the telephone. Where's that come from? Why are we accepting it? No more. That's what I say. And something that I am absolutely outraged by today, ladies and gents, some of you might be too. Colin Pitchfork, remember him? The double child murderer. He is soon going to be out and about on a street near you. Why? I don't think that should ever happen. If you think it is appropriate to go around murdering children, then guess what? You should never see the light of day again. In fact, I would go one step further if I was in charge of this country. I would bring back the death penalty when it is absolutely proven that you have murdered a child. Am I wrong? I'm sure you'll have something to say about all of that. Well, joining me tonight, ladies and gents, right, I do need a little bit of a lay down because you can tell the sun's out because I've got Suzanne Evans looking nice and summery alongside me. You're a new face to this show, not to channel, but very welcome to you, political commentator. And the reason I'm saying I need a lay down, ladies and gents. I knew you'd do this. If I could get him, if I could get this fella to stand on this table right now, I absolutely would. I can't for various health and safety reasons. I don't think our insurance would stretch to it, but I can't even describe what's going on under this table, ladies and gents. Michelle,
fake news.
There is. I can't. I'm going to try and take a picture.
Nobody wants that, Michelle.
Yeah, do you know what?
It's tea time.
I'll zip it. All I'll say is there's a lot of summer attire going on underneath this table. I will never be able to unsee it, and at some point I will try and get a picture and maybe get it onto my social media or something like that. So anyway, Kevin Craig, the CEO of PLMR, is alongside me. You know the drill as well, don't you, on this show, everyone? It's not just about us. It is very much about you guys at home as well. What do you make to the goings-on of the day? The stories that we will be covering, and quite frankly, anything else that's on your mind. Get in touch with me. gbviews@gbnews.com is my email address, or Twitter if that's your thing. GB News. You can reach me there. But big day today, everybody. We've been going around in circles about this now for months, 14 months to be precise. I'm talking, of course, about the Partygate report that was out today. And of course, you guessed it, Boris Johnson was found guilty with a big fat G. Apparently, he's done loads of stuff wrong. Let's have a little look at the key findings of the report. Oh, OK, I was going to try and show you them on the screen, but instead I'll read them to you instead. Deliberately misled the Parliament. 90-day suspension recommended if he was still an MP. Apparently now they want to look at taking his former member's pass off him. They reckon it's a deliberate attack on the democratic institution. And it goes on. I was going to read them all out, but there's so many of them, quite frankly, some of the things that he think that they say he's done. Of course, he's come out, Suzanne, basically said it's tripe. This is a protracted political assassination. It's rehashing a load of old nonsense. He's having none of it. What do you make to it?
So what do I make of it? I really can't forgive Boris Johnson for locking the country down. I can't believe the vast majority of the House of Commons that wanted to do the same thing, including, of course, just about everybody on the committee that was investigating Boris Johnson. So in that sense, I think this is very much a kangaroo court. Because they're all hypocrites. That's what I think. But some of the things that they brought in, I mean, trying to strip him of his parliamentary pass when he's no longer an MP, that is just vitriol. That's just spite. There's no doubt about that. A 90-day suspension, that is unheard of. I had a look back at parliamentary records. I got back as far as 1949. Nobody's been suspended for anything like that amount of time. The most anyone's been suspended was 30 days, arguably for stuff that's more serious. So there's a sense, I think, that the people who were saying
the old washing machine salesman.
Yeah, he got...
Remember him? Keith Vaz, to give him his correct name. He was pretending that he was a washing machine... I think it was an industrial washing machine salesman. He was quite precise in his antics, that's for sure. Anyway,
so can't forgive him. Partygate was a disaster. How dare they sit there, send police after us, drones to catch walkers, cancel our Christmas, you know, fine kids for having snowball fights. How dare they when they were sat in Downing Street partying? Totally wrong, absolute hypocrites. But that doesn't take away from the fact that this is just spiteful and vindictive.
Yeah, this notion of kangaroo courts, right? I'll tell you my problem with it. It won't surprise you, Kevin, to know I've got a few problems with it, actually, but I've only got till 7, so I'll summarise them. My first point we'll all be familiar with, Harriet Harman, the chair of this investigation. I can't think of any walk of life, right, where you can chair an investigation into something, into someone, if you've previously tweeted or spoken publicly slamming and castigating the person that you're supposed to be investigating. So Harriet Harman, if you've not seen these, I'm going to just play them on the screen. She was basically tweeting multiple times, saying stuff like, are they going to challenge this? It's not just any old laws, but these are essential to protect even more people getting affected. These were the laws that they've gone on and broke. So she did the verdict before she was even appointed. How is that impartial? It's not.
Well, there's a very worrying tendency today to try and make allowances for Boris Johnson's behaviour. Harriet Harman is, yes, the chair of the committee. She was one of a number of members. The majority of the committee was a Conservative majority. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? So it's his own peers that judged that Boris deliberately misled the Commons, misled the committee, he breached confidence in parliamentary processes and procedures, and he was compliant and he actively supported vitriol and abuse directed at members of Parliament. So, and Harriet Harman, she was declared as part of the committee beforehand and Boris didn't object. And Boris said everything was fine with the process until it found him out to be a scoundrel and a liar, right? And the families, I am more interested in what the families of the bereaved who had to live a certain way, I believe it was necessary during lockdown, Suzanne doesn't, OK, to get this country through the COVID crisis. And Boris, there's no kangaroo court. If Parliament, which has got a Tory majority, doesn't like this, vote it down next week.
Well, he makes a good point. I mean, so in response to this, everybody, and it's just not possible, I can't read it all out, he's come back with a response. It's about 16,000 words. But he pulls out, you know, so many different aspects. And one of the things that makes me chuckle, he's saying, basically, that at 21:58 p.m, they say in this report that Boris Johnson saw an event going on. And he kind of goes on and he says, how do they know what I saw? What retinal impressions have they somehow discovered that are completely unavailable to me, he asks. And he's got a point. How do they know what he saw? You don't. But
it's correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, it's 108+ pages, this report.
It is.
You've just pulled out one quote.
That's a quote from him. That's his response to it. His
response. What he's doing, and he's not the only one, Jacob Rees-Mogg has been at it, is throwing out all this noise to deflect. What's important about this report is honesty in public life. One second, Susanna, I won't interrupt you. I won't interrupt you. It's honesty in public life in the chamber of the House of Commons. Whether you're Tory, Labour, Lib Dem, SNP, don't lie to Parliament.
But it was a predetermined outcome. This is my point.
No, it wasn't.
Of course it wasn't. was.
No,
Harriet,
it wasn't.
I've just put it up on my screen. I've just started reading about Harriet Harman believed that he was guilty before she took the job of a 14-month report process.
No. All politicians had on that committee have got previously expressed views in politics. It's a quasi-judicial process. They brought in extra reinforcements from outside respected legal figures. And what's going on now, which is why Angela Rayner is right to talk about Johnson as a Poundland Trump, is an attempt to discredit a process which is apolitical, because it's Conservative MPs trying to reclaim honesty for their party.
OK, so if Labour MPs like Angela Rayner are trying to stand up for democracy and honesty, what did she say today? She said that Boris Johnson should never have been Prime Minister. What a ridiculous thing to say. Boris Johnson had one of the largest majorities we've ever seen in the history of politics in this country. He had the universal support of the electorate, which is how he became Prime Minister in the first place, against the odds and in a very fair campaign. To say something like that, I'm sorry, she's the one that looks like a pound shop idiot.
No, she isn't.
Well, that's what she looks like by saying something so ludicrous.
Well, what does she say? He should never have been Prime Minister. She's not. Nobody would dispute he won fair and square a mandate from this country.
Well, then she shouldn't have said that he should never have been Prime Minister.
Well, he's been shown to be unfit by his own actions.
Well, so have several Labour MPs.
No.
So have people
stay
like
on
Tony
point.
Blair.
Stay
on
on point.
He should never have been Prime Minister, arguably.
Boris Johnson, well, returning around the country from decades of Tory failure, I'd argue
taking us into a failed war that's led to absolute catastrophe.
Let's keep it on Boris. We'll do Tony if you want. But basically, Boris Johnson, what Angela said was he's been shown he's let people down, even his own son. Tory MPs are more upset about this than some Labour MPs.
Let's look at this whole, because one of the things when you read some of this, I think first and foremost I feel very disappointed about the absolute state of politics in this country, because I feel a little bit like I'm watching my child have a bit of a fallout with people in the nursery playground, because for 1 minute it was going to be a 10-day suspension, but then because he said some mean things about the process, then they were going to recommend a 90-day suspension.
He doesn't respect anybody, Michelle.
Well, I wouldn't respect someone that was investigating me that had already declared me guilty.
It's not just Harriet Harman, is it? Is it Bernard Jenkins? Is he the same?
Yes, well, that leads me nicely on to Bernard Jenkins, because now the allegation, of course, has come out that he was at a party for his this one was for his wife's birthday, apparently, everybody. Now they're saying that they want the police involved in that, as though the police have got nothing else better to do with their time. This whole kind of, you can't have your pass anymore. They're going to be voting on Monday, of course, which, by the way, is Boris Johnson's birthday on Monday, but that's when there's a free vote to look at some of this stuff. But now they're kind of saying, we're going to take your pass off you so you can't come back in. It's like, shut up. How old are you all?
Well, no, it's showing he disrespects Parliament. I mean, I think broadly, people are so tired, and all the names you've mentioned there, Bernard, people are so tired of a Conservative-inflicted soap opera on this country. We're just tired of it.
But do you think it's a Tory-inflicted soap opera, or is it actually people that cannot bear the fact that actually some of the oiks in society stepped up? A lot of them turned out actually to vote in the last election when they didn't previously, because they connected to and resonated with Boris Johnson.
I am an oik.
They didn't like that.
Oiks should be listened to, Michelle.
Yeah, but they didn't like that. And from the day that Boris Johnson crossed that threshold, they were having none of it. Also, as well, the big fat B word, we've not mentioned that one, everybody, because some would argue that this was, a whole conspiracy theory to try and get Boris out of the door so that you could try, Suzanne, and reverse Brexit.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, and obviously somebody like Bernard Jenkins was very much in favour of Brexit, so I don't think you can certainly lay that at his door. But for me, it is, again, I think, in part, a continued Brexit argument. There is no doubt the Labour Party absolutely hates Boris. He is everything they hate. He is a successful, well-educated, privately educated man who has enormous...
What's he been successful at?
Come on, he was a successful journalist. He's a successful author.
Sacked from the Times for making up quotes.
He became Prime Minister. You cannot say someone who becomes
for
Prime
lying
Minister
about his personal life by Michael Howard.
This country is not successful.
He's not.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was
from your
successful at.
perspective.
And I bet he makes the Labour Party's knees shake, because what he was successful at is converting people that were previously absolutely in bed with Labour. He turned them into Tories. I mean, people like that I know in Hull and places like that, voted Tory, I would never have said that they would have done that. And it wasn't Tory that they were voting.
No.
It was Boris Johnson they were voting.
Boris Johnson, important to say, won an election fair and square. I said, has he been a successful Prime Minister? No. Does he make Labour's knees shake? Well, if I read that question in the way that you mean it, he is a good communicator. I will say that the Labour Party, which I'm a lifelong supporter of, did not help ourselves with our leader at the last election, Jeremy Corbyn. So Boris was lucky, but his luck's run out. Happy birthday, mate.
Yeah, well, we shall see. We shall see. I want your thoughts on this. What do you make to it all? Do you agree with Boris Johnson when he basically says this is a long-winded political assassination, or do you just think, actually, his time has come, he's been done fair and square? And what do you make to this whole punishment, do you reckon? By the way, why do you even have a pass to the parliamentary state if you're not an MP anymore? Can you imagine? I don't know about you, but do you leave your old job and then still go hanging around the staff canteen? If I was doing that, if I got fired or left from here and I was hanging around, I'd expect either A, to be regarded as a bit weird, or B, to be turfed back out again. Why do they have that in the first place? Your thoughts on all of that when I come back. A lot coming up your way. Kid, if you murder children, should you ever be allowed to walk free in society? I absolutely say not. Colin Pitchfork, I want to talk about him. I also want to talk about companies. Should they be fined if they provide you, me and the rest of us with poor service? I say yes.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me, Suzanne Evans, the political commentator, and Kevin Craig, the CEO of PLMR Communications. I've annoyed myself during that break, everyone, because I started thinking then about, we're talking about Boris Johnson perhaps losing his parliamentary estate pass. And then I was thinking, actually, why is that even a thing? Why are you and me and all of the rest of us taxpayers subsidising people to go into the parliamentary estate and eat and drink subsidised food? And I had a look because I was just thinking, I wonder how many of these things there are. I've started scrolling and there are loads. You want to see the list? I'm going to try and get a figure before the end of the programme because it's really annoyed me. Why is it a thing? Why should they still get to continue that access paid for by the likes of me and you? And speaking of paying for stuff, everybody, do you think that rich people should do, and this is a direct quote, their patriotic duty and pay more tax? The Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, he says that high net worths should basically stop trying to find clever accounting tricks and contribute basically to real improvements in public services. Suzanne, you used to be involved in UKIP, the ultimate patriot, some would say. Do you think how patriotic you are is linked to how much tax you pay? I think it's nonsense.
No, of course it is. It's absolute nonsense. I mean, are we saying that people who are on government benefits and don't pay any tax, or people who are on minimum wage and pay minimum tax, are we saying they're not patriotic? Absolute tosh. I'm afraid this is absolutely typical, Wes Streeting's comments, of the kind of socialist hatred of the rich. And let's not forget, fact for you, the top 1% of all taxpayers, the highest 1% who pay the highest taxes, pay 28.9% of the entire tax take. So that's nearly a third. And we're I think the top 1% pay 28% of all of the total income tax. I don't think it's the whole tax take. I think it's the income tax. It's not the whole tax take, but of course, arguably, the wealthiest people in society are also paying more in indirect taxes like VAT. They might not be paying it as relative to their income, but in terms of actual monetary funding for the government, they're paying more VAT than the rest of us because they're spending more than us because they've got that extra spending power. To say that they're going to have to pay more tax to be patriotic is utter nonsense. All we'll end up doing if we continue to overtax people is the very wealthiest in society will leave the country, move their tax affairs somewhere else because they can afford to do it.
Well, I hope you don't mind me saying you're quite a wealthy man, a very successful, self-made man.
Everyone on this panel is 1% by my reckoning.
No. Really?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not.
No, you look at it. Institute for Fiscal Studies website. Look it up. Put your household income in.
What? How do you know where I live? Well, actually, we'll come on to that in the break. What do you think, though, to this notion? Bring it back. So, First of all, two questions. What is how patriotic you are got to do with how much tax you pay?
OK, so I grew up in poverty and I don't live in poverty anymore, right? But what I do know is about the modern Labour Party and Wes Streeting. I'll put that back at you, Suzanne. To say that he or Labour now is anti-wealth or anti-aspiration, I think that's the nonsense, not how you characterised his views. And I think there is an element of, he's not excluding people who don't pay lots of tax from being patriotic. What he's making a really good point, which I think is that it is patriotic if you become wealthy in this country and you don't choose to go down the non-dom offshore route and you think to yourself, well, actually still, there are many other countries where people pay more tax, and look at this country, look what I've got, relatively low corruption, rule of law, a fantastic parliamentary democracy, great state education, so many other things, that it is patriotic to not move your affairs offshore when you get minted, yes.
And do you think that the wealthy should pay more?
Well, you'll hear a statement a lot from Keir Starmer and Wes Streeting, which is that those with the broadest shoulders, right? So what that means broadly is, if you look at the state of our country today, how do we think it's going, right? Is it well funded enough? Are public services great? Is the environment super? And do we need to look, without killing aspiration? Because I'm pro, some might not like this, Suzanne, but the modern Labour Party is pro-business, pro-aspiration. That's why a guy like, I can't remember his name, South African Gary, whose family auto glass, you get your windscreen broken in cars, he's recently donated 5 million quid of his money to the Labour Party. He's not an idiot. He thinks that we need strong businesses.
Right, I don't want to get myself into legal hotspots, so let me press pause on auto, glass, whatever it is, and I'm going to make this a broad question.
Good customer experience of them?
Do you, when I hear about, oh, well, such and such a business person obviously thinks that the Labour Party is so amazing that they have made donations, and this is a general point I'm making. I don't feel that sentiment when I hear that. What I feel is, well, such and such a businessman is basically edging his bets, and he reckons that there's a strong chance that Labour Party will be the next government, so he's trying to curry favour with them.
I never had you as cynical.
What I
never had you as cynical. I mean,
well, there's a new day for everything.
I'm surprised.
I must admit, I'm kind of, in one sense, inclined to agree with you, because I actually don't think either Conservatives or Labour are terribly pro-business at the moment. We've just had the Conservatives increase corporation tax to 25%. Absolutely ludicrous way to shoot the country in the foot. I was reading some statistics about Ireland. You know, in Ireland, the rate of corporation tax is 12.5%. 50% of Ireland's corporation tax intake comes from just 10 US corporations who funnel their money through Dublin purely to avoid US taxes. But that means that Ireland is now running a budget surplus, and they're setting up a sovereign wealth fund next year to support the Irish community. That's what low taxes do for you. High taxes, all they do is just encourage people to move away.
We've been out and about asking you good folk whether or not you think the rich should pay more. Let's have a listen.
Absolutely. Well, why is it that the poor people have to be paying all these taxes all the time?
If you're rich, go somewhere better.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, rich people pay whatever they're entitled to pay, the same as the poor people. So, I mean, it's just an equal right, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. I think they should, because us poor people, they're getting taxed, and we ain't got it like that. These rich people should be paying more money and contributing.
I do believe rich people should get taxed more than regular people.
But they do. They really do. And this is actually the tax burden in this country, as we say, it's the highest it's been in years. I've got to go to a break, but you said to Suzanne that you thought it was a bit of a nonsense of the Labour Party anti-aspiration. I don't think that's a nonsense. I think it's true. I think that they play this kind of tax the rich, tax the rich. I think they use it as a political game.
But you don't like the Labour Party. I can give you an example. You don't like the Labour Party.
I'll give you a very quick example before I go to the break. This whole stupidity when they start going about changing the fee basis for your private schools. They're doing that not because they think it's a very fiscally astute policy, because it's not, it's nonsense. They're doing that because what they're trying to do is resonate with the working class base, going, yeah, get those rich people and sort them out.
What is rich?
But it's not. If you're rich and your kids are in private school, you don't care if there's a 20% added to your fee. You can suck it up. What you can't suck up, if you are the striver that goes without, makes sacrifices and puts your kid in school, that 20% will push you over the edge, and your kids will be back in the state school. That's why I have the view that I do. Anyway, you tell me at home, what do you make to it? Child killers, should they ever be released from prison? That is coming up before the end of the programme, but I also want to ask you as well, these companies, if they're providing poor service, which so many of them are, should they be fined and the fines given to you, the customers? I say yes. What say you?
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, I'm taking the show on the road. We'll be live in Lee with Liz Truss, where the former Prime Minister will escape the Westminster bubble to be quizzed live by you, our amazing GB News viewers.
We're getting out of Westminster. We're going to listen to what people are saying. Join us at 9 o'clock. We're on GB News, me and Dan Wootton. Look forward to seeing you then.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 alongside me, Suzanne Evans, the political commentator, and Kevin Craig, the CEO of PLMR Communications. We just carried our conversation on about the VAT on private school fees. Have you got children in private school? I suspect some of you have. In fact, I know that you have because you've been in touch with me before to tell me about the sacrifices that you make in order to achieve it. I wonder what that policy impact would have on you. Lots of you getting in touch about the Partygate thing. Lots of you pretty disgusted. You're saying as well that you do think it was a kangaroo court. Barry says, if you look like kangaroos, act like kangaroos and think like kangaroos, then what conclusion can people reach? Oh, you're harsh. Delphine says, Michelle, you're missing the point about Boris. We didn't vote for Boris because we loved Boris. We voted for Boris to get Brexit done, and he was the man for the job. Sam says Boris has basically shot himself in both feet over and over again. I'm a true Tory. I'm a true Johnson supporter. But he says, in his view, he was lying through his back teeth, and now he's doing a Trump and muddying the waters to cast doubt on the outcome because it wasn't the one that he wanted.
Well
so lots
said.
of different opinions from you guys at home tonight on this whole rich thing. Again, mixed. No one really thinks it is reflective of how patriotic you are in terms of how much you pay. So Wes Streeting, no one agrees with you on that. So let's talk, shall we, companies? Because if you are with E.ON next, your energy supply, that is, you're in luck because you're going to get a little bit of money your way. So you are. It's only about £8, so you're not going to retire or anything, but it's the principle that I like because that company have just been fined £5 million compensation. This is all because basically their service was really, really poor. I have to say, Suzanne, I've noticed this. It doesn't matter who I ring, it could be anyone. And you pick up the phone, it's like, you are number 27 in the queue, estimated wait time, 40 minutes.
I hate it. And it's only going to get worse with artificial intelligence, I'm afraid, because there's going to be even fewer and fewer people to actually take you seriously and answer the phone. But I think I probably feel a bit differently to you, Michelle, on this one. I was writing about this news, £5 million fine because they didn't answer the phones in time. But I really kind of feel sorry for companies. We've got a staffing crisis at the moment and people are finding it difficult to recruit. What do you do if you've got a shortage in your staff that you can't make up? If you've got people off sick, if your phone lines are down and not working, and you're going to be fined by the regulator. And there's a bit of me that thinks, actually, I think these regulators have a little bit too much power in that area because things go wrong in businesses, things that businesses can't predict. And now they're saying, well, we're going to fine you £5 million. We'll have £4 million of that will go to everybody we think is affected. They'll all get £8. Is that really that important in the grand scheme of things? And then we'll have £1 million, thank you very much, for our little slush fund. And I just think, actually, in this situation, that Ofgem's really trying to profit as a result of perhaps businesses' misfortune.
You see, I hear this pushback all the time. Oh, it's really hard to recruit people and all these poor companies. And I am a capitalist, by the way, so it's quite unusual for me to have my sentiment like this. I need to check myself sometimes. I don't know what's happening to me. I'm going soft.
That's good. It's good, Michelle.
But I sit there and I think, pull the other one, because all these companies that can't staff their customer service line, they don't have any problem staffing their retention line. And so if you press the button and say, right, I want to cancel my contract, there is not a 45-minute waiting time for you. You get answered in a minute. Correct. Because they're desperate to keep your customers. It doesn't wash with me. I just think that I don't know if they've lost the value of the customer.
They have. And you are 100% right on this. And I'm afraid I disagree with Suzanne, because we've just got used to poor customer service, right, of not feeling valued. So I think great that the regulator is making their strength felt, because people are fed up of it. End of. So it's a really good development.
And I'll tell you as well, whilst I'm on my outrage bus that I'm riding tonight...
Is it a red bus?
It's not, and it hasn't got 350 million on the side of it either. No, it's not. It's a different colour one. It's a very good bus, mine. You can join me on it one time. I might get you some common sense if you come on a bus ride with me. Anyway, HMRC, it caught my eye that they're closing one of their primary phone lines down over summer. Because apparently they're saying they've got staffing issues, so they're going to close this service down and instead respond to you online or with these... And I think that's absolutely disgusting. I do not pay my tax for you to sit at home and then tell me that you can't serve me because you're all at home and you're overworked.
And of course, they're public sector, so they won't be fined by anybody. They're a law unto themselves. But why is it only private companies that are not allowed to have any kind of failure? I think that's also the feeling that I have. The private sector gets away with murder in terms of poor customer service. We see poor customer service in the private sector, in the public sector all the time, but it's only the public sector that gets criticised for it and gets fined for it. And I think that is wrong.
Yeah, and some people say, well, if you don't like it, vote with your wallet and go to a different company. Well, that's great if you're not in a contract with someone.
Isn't it? It's hard
a lot
to change.
Of people. A lot of people are contractually stuck.
Yeah, you lose the will to live a bit, really.
But the thin end of the wedge came along when we first started having those automatic telephone answering machines. In the old days, you pick up the phone, you'd talk straight away to a real person, they'd put you through to the department you wanted, and the moment we got press 1 for X and press 2 for Y, it was the beginning of the end. Hate it.
Well, I need to do a dramatic change of tone now, because I do want to bring you some of the latest pictures from Nottingham. Mentioned to you at the start of the programme, there's a vigil there taking place. We've had the minute's silence as well for the victims. People gathering there to show their respects, of course, to the horrific scenes that we saw earlier on this week. Of course, we're all familiar by now. Ian Kurtz, Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar were murdered in the most horrific ways. Right, well, I shall leave that there for now. Lots coming your way, don't go anywhere. I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
all sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, the big green, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock alongside me, Suzanne Evans, the political commentator, and Kevin Craig, the CEO of PLMR Communications. Now, have you heard the news today? It stopped me in my tracks, so it did. Colin Pitchfork, do you remember that name? He is the guy that murdered two, not one, two children, 15-year-old girls to be precise. Anyway, long story short, he was jailed for life in 1988. He went on, he raped these two children as well before he murdered them. He's been released from prison once before and got recalled, I should add. Anyway, long story short, the parole board now have determined that he can be released again. Now, Kevin Craig, it makes me feel sick, not least because when you look at why they reached the decision and some of the the details around it, they say it's deemed that this guy is no longer, keeping him in prison is no longer necessary for the protection of the public. Well, first and foremost, I think actually the parole board have got a lot to learn because they've let out a lot of people actually that have got on to absolutely harm members of the public. But secondly to that, if you murder a child, you're not just in prison to protect the public, you're in prison for punishment. I don't think you should ever see the light of day, and you'll probably disagree with my next little bit, but I would actually look at reintroducing the death penalty for child killers when it's beyond doubt that that's what you've done. What do you make to it all?
Well, I do think that the parole board is getting it wrong, and I don't think enough account is taken of the rights of victims and their families. And I always think in any form of public life that decisions should be, people should take them, and they should actually try and put themselves in the shoes of those affected. And I think there have been, as you say, a number of examples of people being let out. There was the murder of a young teacher, I think, in East London recently by a guy who should not have been released. And there is a debate around how well the parole system functions and its funding. I don't trust any system to be so accurate that I could support the death penalty. I think that if life actually means life, it's actually a worse punishment.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
But then it's a very expensive... We've just been sitting there talking about public finances and all the rest of it. To keep people in prison, literally, for the rest of their days is a very costly affair. What's the point?
I just think that it could be one of our family members where the state gets it wrong one time.
Yes.
Yeah, I do agree with you, Kevin. I'm afraid I've always been opposed to the death penalty. I can't ever see myself changing my mind. For me, it was the case of Stefan Kishko, who was accused of rape. He was a young guy with severe learning difficulties. He couldn't possibly have committed that crime, couldn't possibly have done it. DNA evidence later proved him innocent, but he could well have been hung had he been convicted a few years earlier. And he died shortly after his release. Terribly, terribly sad story. It's never beyond doubt, unfortunately.
But,
and
well,
I think,
it is,
yes,
actually.
it's costly. Yes, it
I can give you
there
a
might
great
be
example.
cases.
Do you remember that guy, the two guys actually, that hacked Lee Rigby to death, for example? There's no one that will ever convince me, well, maybe there's a bit of doubt that he did it.
You'd have made martyrs of those two had they faced the death penalty. So you're not going to change my mind on this one, I'm afraid. But in terms
the Jamie
of
Bulger killers, for example.
Well, I remember I just had my daughter then, and that was horrific. Watching that, but they were young kids. You know, again, it's very expensive, but society sometimes throws up these dreadful people for whatever reason, because something's gone horribly wrong in family circumstances, in education, whatever. And I think society has to pick up the tab very often, personally. But cases like this Pitchfork character, this creature, ghastly. I cannot imagine why he's being let out of prison. I just can't understand it. Because to kill two children is a horrific. There is no way he should be let out. Any double murderer, frankly, I can't see why they should ever be let out of jail. You can never be sure that they're not pulling the wool over the parole board's eyes, over the chaplain's eyes, over the prison officer's eyes. These are devious, nasty, manipulative people. You can't trust them. They should be locked up forever.
And when I read it as well, so you read some of the details of this, it's kind of like, oh, he's successfully completed a load of courses. If I was the parent of one of these children, I would feel so sick to sit there and think, so let me get this straight. This fella, well, I've been living a life sentence of my own, because you will never get over that. If someone's done that to your child, you never get over that. So I've been living this horrific life sentence of my own. And whilst I've been doing that, my whole family absolutely decimated. He has been sitting there studying this, that and the other, enriching his life. It would sicken me to the core.
And that's why I just think that the system needs to be more victim and victims' family-centric, and that's why people get disillusioned, because they don't want to hear about the rights of criminals. They want to hear about those who've been hurt by what they've done.
And what do you mean by that when you say it should be more victim-centric? Do you think we should have more kind of victim family involvement in terms of deciding then who gets to come out of prison and who doesn't?
I just think there's don't change the system and fund it so you don't let people out who are at risk of doing it again. Learn from the mistakes and respect those. Introduce more importance to victims' rights of crime.
Listen to this, everyone. More than 4 in 10 offenders that have been freed from jail or handed community sentences and who went on to commit serious crimes had been assessed by probation officers as only being of, I quote, medium risk of causing serious harm. 44% of risk assessments apparently were also inaccurate or incomplete. I mean, there's certain things in life that you can kind of get away with making a little bit of a mistake on. Making a mistake in terms of who you let out, who then go on to kill. In fact, actually, I'm a bit harsh on these things. I think if you make that decision and that person does go on to commit a serious crime, I would want then the spotlight to be put onto you as an individual. I don't know, maybe there is some kind of claim towards some kind of neglect or something like that. Maybe try and focus the minds of people to make the right decisions. Would that help people? I don't know.
I guess this is why it's not an individual decision. There is a board that hears it. They come to a collective decision. So in a sense, there's kind of collective responsibility. But yes.
Well, I'd investigate all of them then. I'd look to charge all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I am just a little bit harsh. There's a lot of people that agree with me when it comes to the death penalty for child killers. However, Philip says, yes, the risk of making them a martyr is a real one. Anyway, look, the time flies, doesn't it? Wow. For now, thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you, Suzanne, as well, for your company. You know the score, don't you? Do not go anywhere. Nigel Farage is up next. If you've just tuned in, didn't catch the start of the programme, you can watch it back on YouTube or the app, you lucky people. But for now, have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather for GB News from the Met Office. Another fine, sunny one for most on Friday, and again pretty warm, but
an increasing chance of seeing some more thunderstorms. Any storms this evening over the west of Northern Ireland tending to drift away. Most will have a dry night with lengthy clear spells, a bit misty around the coast of northwest Scotland. Later in the night, the cloud increasing, the possibility of some showers in the far southwest. But for most, as I said, dry and clear. Pretty warm and humid in the west, but cooler across the northeast. Temperatures, rural parts of Scotland, well down into single figures. So a coolish start here, but for most, it will be, again, a warm day on Friday. For the vast majority, another blue sky day as well. But in the west, any sunshine turning increasingly hazy as the cloud spills in. And we are going to see some showers breaking out. One or two maybe early on in the southwest, but much of the morning dry. It's really in the afternoon and evening where parts of Wales and Northern Ireland could catch a thundery downpour that could cause some problems, intense rain, lots of lightning. As I said, most places won't see them, just stay fine, warm and sunny with temperatures in the mid to high 20s. But an increasing chance of seeing those thundery showers during Friday evening, again, mostly in the west at this stage, but with more clouds spilling in. Things just generally turning warmer and more humid as we head into the weekend. So Saturday won't be as much in the way of blue sky around. Still plenty of hazy sunshine and many places will stay dry. But certainly for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, Wales and western parts of England, the likelihood that there will be in these areas some thundery showers. Again, many central and eastern parts will probably stay dry and still pretty warm. It's the humidity, I think, though, that you'll really notice, particularly through the evenings. A balmy summer's evening on Saturday evening and another very warm and humid day on Sunday. Again, there will be hazy sunshine, but also be prepared for thundery showers.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails,